Hello and welcome to Funeral DNA, the podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And today we have on Jason Leach from Vinyly. Hi, Jason. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi there.
So Jason, welcome for coming on our show, and thank you once again for being here. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jason Leach. I live in the UK in Scarborough in the northeast. I run a company called Vinyly Limited, where we press ashes, human and pets as well, into vinyl records.
So how did the idea for Vinyly come about?
It was a bit of an organic thing, really. It was never meant to be a business, I should say first. It was really an idea. I got to a certain age where I was encouraged actually by my mum, who got a job in a funeral directors, sort of out of the blue, really. And she kept making the point that lots of young men my age were coming through the funeral directors, and she was encouraging me to make sure I had my affairs in order. And I found it I didn't like being told to think about things like that. And I found that interesting that I was so resistant to it. And when I spoke to my friends and peers and asked them if they'd been thinking about it or if they had anything planned, I was shocked by how hostile the reaction was that I got quite often. So I started thinking a lot more about it, and I started thinking about what I'd like to do. I think about that time I heard of Hunter S. Thompson, who put his ashes into fireworks, and probably very early on, before people offered anything like that. And I thought that's a pretty cool idea. I had been making records, releasing my own records since the early 1990s. So I've been, I knew what I was doing. I'd been involved with pressing plants, and I've been making a lot of records, knew how it worked. And I thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind being in a record. So I explored how I might go about that, and actually started setting up a website, which was more a sort of exercise into dealing with the thoughts myself than anything else. And as a result of that, the website was really a bit of fun. And like I say, it was never meant to be a business. And we were exploring, first and foremost, obviously, the process and procedure about how you might go about offering it, and actually the process involved in actually making a record that worked, and at the same time sort of presenting that in a site. And when that went up, it went crazy. Lots and lots of people saw it. We got lots of interest from international press, and very quickly started getting people asking actually to do it. I suddenly found myself with something that I was having to do, and I wasn't really expecting. So I was a bit nervous, because obviously there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. And having not planned it, I hadn't really considered whether I'd be good and able to do it. So I was nervous, and I obviously recognised the real responsibility, particularly with my mother having been working at funeral directors. So I spoke to her a lot, of course, and very pleased to say that actually I found my feet very quickly, and everybody so far has been very pleased with how they've been dealt with. And as I said, as far as the procedure goes for making the records, I spent a lot of time pressing all sorts of different materials into vinyl to make sure that I'd be able to do it and get a good playable record so that you can still see the ashes.
Okay, so can you then, and you brought up the process, can you explain a little bit about the process? How do you press them into the albums? What do you start with? Do you start with a fresh piece of vinyl? Are they already albums that are already made? Yeah, just a little bit into there without giving us, away.
Yeah, there's obviously some secrets involved, but essentially it's a real vinyl record. They are real vinyl records. They're not sort of fake. They're not sort of vinyl records that have been altered afterwards. They're made in the proper way that vinyl records are made. We get the audio, and we master that onto lacquers, an A-side and a B-side lacquer, which is also known as a dub plate. And then these lacquers are taken, and then from those the word is grow, a metal stamper, which is done by a process of electrolysis. So you're actually making tin opposites, if you like, negatives of the vinyl record. So instead of the grooves, these plates or the metal work will have a spiral of a mountain range, if you like. They'll be the opposite of the groove. And then those A-side and B-side metal stampers are used to press vinyl and make a record. At that moment, you put the labels in, and during the procedure as well, we add the ashes while the thing is being pressed. Obviously, normally vinyl records are made in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even, and so these machines are working in series or parallel, these pressing machines, but we actually have a single press, which are quite unusual. So it means that we can interrupt the process as and when necessary in order to do what we need to do.
So how much roughly cremated remains go into each one of the albums then?
We would say a teaspoon. We ask for people to send us just over a teaspoon per record that they want made. And then it's approximately that amount. So a small amount.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that these records they're real. Do people get to choose the songs that go on the album? Do they just leave them blank and use them sort of as a keepsake?
Well, people do all sorts of different things. Obviously, people have sometimes music they've made. They often have, and we very much encourage people to use spoken word. I mean, the best ones that we've done from our points of view, and I think ultimately for the customers and their family and friends, have a lot of their spoken word on there because they're very much more personalized, and it's their voice, it's them. And other people often do have a track of silence, for example, so you can just listen to the record and maybe a few pops and crackles and reminisce, for example. Sometimes people do put music on there. There's all sorts. Sometimes people have recordings of favorite places, for example, and so situations, or audio taken from favorite family videos, VHS tapes, even answer phone messages, any audio basically. And we do try to encourage people to try and think more broadly. Obviously, the initial thought is, I did it my way. And you can understand a funeral service, people use music more in that way, but with an Vinyly record, it's an opportunity to make a real memento of a person or a person's life and their families and friends. We've had fantastic ideas from different customers as well. So we tend to, let people know about the sorts of things other people have done. So they tend to change as we start working with them. But it can be any audio essentially.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do they need to own the rights? Let's say there's like a favorite song of a lost loved one, or are they able to put that on their loved one's vinyl?
Well, no, like I say, what we do, we make music ourselves. So this is an important point for us. And we always make our best efforts to contact people if they want music to go on there. We've never had anyone have a problem with it. These things are often made one copy or very few copies. When we've got the permission, we let the artists know as well that they have evidence that they purchased the material, so they've got their rights, their fair dues for it. But like I say, many of the people do spoken word and all different types of mixtures of types of audio.
So this is something I thought, and I was thinking of your service, and after we got off of talking to the Scattering Ashes company, who also offers your line of services, and often I thought of this as being an afterthought. The families are sitting home trying to figure out the way to close up or have closure on the matter. This is one final thing that they could do. The recording though of the voice, and you hear it all the time, that the memory of somebody's voice is one of the first things that leaves you with the passing. Is this something that maybe you should be talking about to companies or people on the pre-need side? Maybe families should be more aware and be getting a voice recording of their loved ones before it's too late. Something like having your mother say, I really love you, son, and just so you can always have that recorded in the future.
Well, absolutely. I mean, like I say, I think they're the most profound records. What I loved when I first came up with the idea, and I was thinking about it, I was thinking I would love to have my great grandfather's record and be able to play it and hear him talk, hear his voice actually move the air in a room, because your voice and sound it vibrates the air. So, you know, someone might play my record in 200 years time, and it's probably the closest I'll get to time travel. Someone will actually hear my voice move the air in that room at that time. So it's a nice thought, and very, a very personal thing. And yeah, I mean, there's a documentary on our website for a record that we made with a guy called John Hobson. He actually, without knowing about Anne Vinyly, had he thought about getting his mum speaking, and he'd actually spent 2 or 3 hours with her, speaking to her before she got too unwell, asking her about his family, where he grew up, where the family came from, memories from that he didn't know about, and stories. So he had this treasure chest of a family history. And it was just amazing to sit there with him. I actually spent time with the guy and helped him to edit this down. A lot of it done remotely, sending it back and forth. But it was just fantastic. And his record is just, for anybody in his family in the future, is a real meaningful object. So it's great. Yeah, and it is something people could think of. But nowadays, so many people record everything. Even inadvertently, you're going to have a lot of things recorded that may seem very, unimportant, but it might just be a conversation in a car on the way somewhere that you've recorded by mistake, but it might really capture that person or a time. Certainly for myself with audio, I spend a lot of time sampling, not other music, but sampling sounds and going out field recordings. And I'm amazed when I go back and listen to DATs that I used at the time. And, even the slightest sniff or a car going by, it can bring back so many memories. People say the same with smells, of course. And I think sound is a lot more evocative than people give it credit for.
For sure. So now you did mention that there is an A side and a B side, or the dub side. Is there a limit in terms of tracks or the length of the album for families?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to, for a 12-inch vinyl, we tend to say aim for about maximum 18 minutes. You could often get more than that on a standard vinyl, but we are obviously putting materials into it, and we've got to balance that. So the sort of what you're putting on there makes a difference. If you've got a lot of ambient sounds, you don't need to put so much information, if you like, for want of a better description, in the groove. So it doesn't need as much room, and you can maybe fit more time. But 18 minutes per side is a good starting guide. We have managed to get more on.
So now these albums, I'm picturing the vinyl albums, but one of the biggest things, obviously, with vinyl collections is the album covers and the album art.
Yeah.
Do families provide you with album art? Do you create stuff? How does that?
Yeah, well, we do both. I mean, we have our in-house designer who's been doing my albums sleeves for over 20 years. She's actually part of the business as well. And we offer the families templates that they can either generate their own artwork. Many people, if they don't know themselves, know people who can sort of set out photographs and whatever images they want to put on there. Otherwise, we do offer to do that with and for them to their brief. So they might, if they don't have that access to someone who can help, then what the customer will do is they'll speak with Harriet, and she'll talk to them about what they want, and they'll start sending images, and she might say, well, I need something a bit higher resolution, or it will look a bit fuzzy or whatever. Or they might send lots of photographs, for example, or photographs of little letters they've written, whatever it might be. And then they might want a collage, and Harriet will work with them to sort of position it and design to their brief, essentially, and talk to them about maybe what other words they might want on their credits, or little bits that maybe family members write. Again, that can be the same on the vinyl. It might be that family members want to say something about the person that's passed away that they want to include on the record. So, I mean, visual and audio wise, it's pretty endless what is capable. You're limited though by obviously the time you can fit on each side and the area you have. But with an album, you have an A side, you have the front and the back and the spine, and you have the labels, obviously, the A and the B side, the labels in the center of the vinyl. So I think that there's enough there, and the restriction is good because, you know, people sometimes think, well, I'd like to get this back within 6 weeks. But by the time, once they start looking into and going through their photos and really thinking about what audio they want on, it can go on for a year or longer. Often people take very much longer because they want to get it right. Once they realize what they can do, they start to really sort of give it some real deep thought, and they end up being the best ones.
So your clients, how do you find your clients, or how do your clients find you? Are you affiliated with certain funeral homes?
Well, we are, I mean, it's been one of the amazing things about this. Like I said, the idea was almost forced me into doing this because it was never planned. I mean, I'm happy to be doing it now. It's great and very satisfying, lovely to be working with people, giving them something like this. But yeah, it really did all its own promotion very much initially. It keeps sort of having waves where it will get picked up by a magazine or something, and then a lot more people hear about it. So it does its own marketing, if you like. But we do work through and are connecting with funeral directors internationally at the moment. We're speaking with many. There are many that have some of our hard copy literature. And are offering our service to their regions, and then we're just providing them with the background service and support. Okay. So we're very keen to hear from any more.
So if clients were looking for your services, how do they find you? What is your web address?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the hard bit. If they look for Ashes into Vinyl, they'll find us. The site name And Vinyly was a bit of a pun on "and finally." I don't know if you have it in America, but the news here is always the last news item. So we were deliberating: should it be and Vinyly and spell it like finally, or should we stick to the vinyl spell? So in the end, we decided to stay with vinyl. So it's ANDVINYLY.com, andvinyly.com. But like I say, if you search Ashes into Vinyl, you will find us.
All right. So if you could leave our audience that are listening at home, or perhaps hopping on YouTube to watch us, if you could leave them with one thing about And Vinyly, or their decision to possibly, you know, create this album for their loved one, what would that be?
I would say that it's a fantastic audio and visual memento. To very much think carefully about what to put on there, think about spoken word. Also recognize the beauty of it is because you normally make a lot more than we make very much fewer runs than you would normally make with vinyl record. But think about friends as much as extended family. Maybe good friends have spent a lot of time with the person who's passed away for the last 10, 15 years. They often sometimes they don't even know the family. I've known myself from experience, might not even get invited to the ceremony, for example, just because the family aren't aware of them. They may have spent the last 20 years with them almost every day, but all of these people get to have a memento, which means a lot to them. So the great thing about it is it can go without you leaving still a lot of the ashes to keep in an urn or to scatter or do other things. You can still have a lot of your family members and friends who can have one of these things and keep for generations.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jason. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And for those listening at home or watching on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
Stay tuned next week where we bring up a new topic where we analyze a different unique component, trend, or innovation that makes up the funeral industry, or as we call it, funeral DNA. Thanks. Bye for now.